William Sylvester, you're the chief of police in Newark, New Jersey today, but you grew up here in Roxbury. You grew up in the community. You were a gang member. And there's a lot of talk about the plight of young black men. I want to ask you, is there a conspiracy? Is there something going on that causes black men to have so many problems today in this society?
Well, first of all, I think there's always been a conspiracy. Ever since we've been in this country, there's been a conspiracy against black men, against black people in this country. I don't think it's an accident that the amount of drugs that you find in this country are mostly found in the black community. I don't think it's an accident that black men can't find jobs. I don't think it's an accident that black crime is portrayed in the news on TV much more than white crime is. And if you have a drive-by shooting of a black person, they show it one night and that's the end of it. A white person gets shot in a drive-by, they have it on the news for 2 and 3 weeks until the person is caught, and then when he's caught, they follow the trial.
But wait, now you're saying this, but I'm sure those police officers listening to you in Newark now are going to say, damn, is this Billy Sylvester? Aren't you going to have white officers wondering whether or not you're paranoid or racist or both?
Well, I think they've had 3 years to think about it. I've been there 3 years. I don't think I'm paranoid, and I don't think I'm being racist. You're asking me a question. I'm answering it the best way I can. There is a conspiracy that all of this is happening to one particular people in the inner city. I mean, it didn't happen by accident. Why is it happening?
Well, let's see why it's happening. Let's go to Jess Mowry in San Francisco. Jess Mowry, do you think there is a conspiracy in this country to do what's going on to black men today?
First, let me say I'm in total agreement with the gentleman who just spoke. In fact, I was kind of surprised to hear he was chief of police. Going back to this film segment you had, I don't necessarily buy the theory that there's 12 white men in a room deciding policy, but whether structural or otherwise, there's definitely something going on that is against our youth.
But who can we identify? Let's identify something or somebody. We can't just say it's out there. Is it the government? Is it the people with economic control? Who was part of this conspiracy that you're alluding to?
Well, I think you just named two right there. Didn't the government, about the time they gave up to war on poverty, about the time they gave up to war in Vietnam, decide to adopt a policy of benign neglect towards black people, towards us?
Well, let's talk to
Kevin. So there you have the government.
Let's go to Kevin Powell in Atlanta. Kevin Powell, do you buy this theory, this concept that there is a conspiracy against black men in America? Black men in America?
Well, I'll say this. There's definitely something wrong when most of my friends don't even have the option of going to college. Most of them have either ended up in prison or on their way to prison because of the economic system in this country where there are no job opportunities and they're forced to commit petty crimes to basically survive. You know, which includes, unfortunately, drug dealing in our communities. There's something wrong with that.
But isn't some of this caused by black men? No one puts a gun in their hands. No one tells them to drop out of school. No one tells them to not work at McDonald's.
But at the same time, black people don't own the airplanes that brought drugs into our communities. Black people don't own the resources that brought guns into our communities. Where did those things come from?
Well, can't they say no? I mean? Can't they refuse drugs? Can't they refuse guns? I mean, can't they turn...
If you live in a repressed community where there are no resources, there's no access to opportunities, you're going to take what you have and try to make the best out of it. If drugs drop in your community, you're going to become a drug dealer because that's saying this is a business that I can do and survive.
Well, why are you different?
That's reality.
Why are you different? You're not using drugs. You're not using a gun. Why are you special? Are you unique?
But I'm still a young black man in America who's subjected to a racist system.
Even though you're a very successful writer, even though you're well known in pop culture, you're saying you face the same thing.
It means absolutely nothing. I still can't get into certain institutions in this country. I still can't get a cab in New York City. I still can't walk into a store without being followed, or any store in this country. It's basic.
Well, let me go to Dr. Sullivan here in Boston. Dr. Sullivan, you have spent a lot of your time looking at the educational system and the impact on black men. Do you think there's an educational conspiracy against young black males?
No, I don't think there is one. I know there is one. The facts speak for themselves. When you go to a court of law, that's one thing that you can present. The facts speak for themselves.
And what are the facts?
The facts are that there's a perception of lack of achievement of black males. The fact is that there really is achievement of black males. The fact is, for the last 20 years, the SAT scores, the indicator that a lot of people point to in terms of education going down, have gone up for blacks. And if you look at that carefully between gender, black students, males, are higher than females. So the school is progressing. It's not progressing with other races itself, so that the facts don't really match what's happening.
Well, let's talk about some of the facts. Corey Brown, you're a young black man here in the Boston area. You're hearing all these experts and learned men talk about the conspiracy against a young black man. Do you feel that there is some kind of conspiracy against you?
I do, because every day I still have to deal with the same situations that they're talking about now, such as the gentleman in Atlanta said, going into the store being followed or can't even get a cab in certain areas.
Well, what do you think we should do about it? I mean, if that's the case, what will change this? What do we need to change the system?
Basically, I don't think there's nothing that can really be changed, because the way I look at it, it's still going to happen regardless, because the way we're looked at.
Well, does that make you paranoid? Does it make you angry? I mean,
it makes me both, because I'm scared of what could happen to me in those situations, and also I'm angry because it's hard for me to do anything about it.
Okay, well, let me go to Apollo in San Francisco and ask you about it, because we were talking about this conspiracy against young black males, but aren't young black males, in a sense, part of the problem? I mean, the guns, the drugs, the violence. Apollo?
Well, I mean, they're pushed into it, so how could they be part of the problem? They didn't start the problem. You got to look at who started the problem. Some people may look at it that way, but I don't think so.
Well, let me see if I can go to Dr. Lee Brown in Baltimore. Dr. Brown, you have, more than anyone else, made the system work. You've been a police chief in Houston, a chief of police in New York City. Now you're the drug czar, and you hear all of these people, young men, you know, educated people, talking about a conspiracy. You're part of that government. Are you part of this conspiracy, Lee Brown? Are we learning something tonight we didn't know?
Let me say, prior to taking this position, I was on the faculty at Texas Southern University at Houston. In addition to teaching, I directed the Black Male Initiative Program. And there I devoted my full time to addressing the issues that confronted African-American males in this country. Now, I'm not one who would adhere to the position that there are people sitting around conspiring against African-Americans, but even such a conspiracy existed, I don't think there'd be much different than what we see right now. We have to look at what is occurring in this country and what has been occurring over a period of years. I see a collapse in many of the institutions that held the community together in the past, starting with the family. For a 30-year period, we've seen the collapse of the family in our communities. Beyond that, we no longer have the sense of neighborhood that we used to have. If we look at the role of young people in our society, particularly African-American males, we do not find a meaningful role for them. When I grew up, for example, I grew up in a little small town. I used to contribute to the economic well-being of my family. I go out and pick cotton and cut grapes and do things of that nature. We don't see that opportunity existing anymore today.
Well, Kevin Powell, let me ask you about that. He's described some problems that aren't the system, that it's not the government. It sounds that people who want to make it and who are committed to hard work can make it. You agree?
What does making it mean? You know what I mean? Just because I might be a writer who writes for a major publication doesn't mean anything if the entire black community is not making it. You know what I mean? When I say making it, I mean surviving. So if I live in Brooklyn, New York, where I do live, and the rest of the community is doing bad, that doesn't mean that I'm doing well because I'm part of that community. You know, and I think one of the problems because of this 30-year lapse that Lee Brown is talking about, which we're talking about integration, is that, you know, the family got disintegrated because we were rushing to have access into mainstream America and neglecting a lot of the institutions that were in our communities, the family, what have you. You know, our black-owned businesses have gone down over the last 30 years, and that, to me, also contributes to this deterioration of the status of young black men, you know, because there are no economic opportunities, because there are no black businesses. There's no direction because people like Lee Brown have moved out of the black community. I'm using him as an example, but a lot of successful, quote-unquote, black people have moved out of the black community, and then they become totally intangible, so there are no black role models, and in the absence of that, you have people who are drug dealers and hustlers and rappers as role models.
Well, let's talk about that now. We have here Miss Tony here in Boston. You've heard this conversation, these men talking about the problems. Your own sense, is there something going on in this country that impacts black men?
Well, I feel that if we don't put anything into our black youth, what do we expect to get out of it? We have to spend more quality time with them. We have to be able to show them more role models and just do things as a family, as a unit, and just let our kids know that we're there for them.
Okay.